When we look at a firm in monopolistic competition, some of the characteristics are very similar to what we see with perfect competition. Namely, there are many firms, probably too many to count, or more than you'd want to count at least, and there are very low or no barriers to entry. So any new firm can join the industry. The key difference, though, is this idea of product differentiation. Whereas in perfect competition, we have homogeneous products, in monopolistic competition, you have products that are slightly different from each other. The way they can be different from each other are several. It could be that some are just better than others. They have different degrees of quality. There could be physical differences, size, shape, maybe different functions or things like that. So just actual physical differences to the product, even though they're mostly similar. You might think of a shirt with different, like little epaulets or something like that on it that makes it different from other types of shirts, but essentially a shirt is a shirt. Location, so are you close to a particular set of consumers, or are you too far from them? And then the idea of branding, so putting a specific brand on your product and then trying to strengthen the reputation of that brand through marketing, having endorsements from celebrities, that sort of thing, which can make people like your brand and want to buy your brand, even though technically, the shirt or whatever it might be, might not be any different from shirts from competitors. Keep in mind with monopolistic competition, the name is very purposeful. It's mostly competition, like perfect competition, it's very competitive, but there is some degree of what we call monopoly power. So if you think about it on a very small scale, what the firm does with product differentiation is to try to create a certain amount of, or a very small scale monopoly. That is, Banana Republic, Gap, they have a monopoly on Gap branded clothes. You can't buy them anywhere else. Now you might argue that those aren't really very different from Old Navy or H&M or somebody like that, and I would agree, you're probably pretty right. The shirts, or pants or whatever you might buy tend to be very similar to each other. But in that small sense, if I see one of those brands as better or more desirable than the others, then that gives me what we call brand loyalty, which gives that brand or that firm a certain amount of monopoly power over me. But that monopoly power is very fragile. That is, if they raise price too much, I might think that one brand is better than another or more desirable, but once they raise price too much, I'll just switch over to one of the substitutes because I'd rather save the money, I suppose. As we said in the previous video, the firm's going to face a relatively elastic demand curve. So just like any other time, we're going to find MC and MR. That's going to be our point of profit maximization. From that point, we're going to go up and find AC and AR, and that's going to tell us overall profit for this firm. So we see at QPM that this firm's average revenue is greater than its average cost. So this rectangle that I've shaded in yellow is the amount of profit, or P1 minus P2 times QPM would be the amount of profit. So it is possible in the short run for the firm to make abnormal profit. However, it's important to point out that because they are dependent on product differentiation, it's likely that that abnormal profit is going to go towards some other things. It could be research and development, making a more quality or a product with better features. It could go towards that. It could go towards advertising, maybe opening a new shop, something like that. So yes, they can make abnormal profit, but they do have to pay particular attention to making sure that their product stays differentiated. And then quickly, these are basically the three different outcomes you can have. If there is abnormal profit, just like what we said with perfect competition, that abnormal profit is going to attract new firms. Remember, we said that there's free entry into this market. It's not hard to do. Also, if I'm getting that abnormal profit because I did something to differentiate my product, so I think of restaurants running specials or restaurants bringing in a new menu. Maybe a restaurant starts to serve sushi. And that gives me a little bit of monopoly power for a bit, and I get more customers because they want to come to my restaurant because of the new menu. Well, that innovation, whatever it was that gave me that bit of monopoly power, that can be easily copied, because again, that's just like the idea of free entry and exit. Existing firms can also do what you're doing. So whatever that innovation was that gave me some power can be easily copied, and that's going to go away. So what we'll see is that the demand curve will shift to the left, and because it shifts to the left, the marginal revenue curve does too, which is going to cause QPM to move to the left, and what you'll see is that those abnormal profits will go away, much like what we saw with perfect competition. The reverse is true if you're experiencing economic loss. So this firm, its average cost at QPM are greater than its average revenue, so this firm is experiencing economic loss, shown by the box there. And again, firms are going to leave. Firms are going to look for a way to differentiate, to shift their demand curve to the right, to make people demand their product more because it's a little bit better. And again, the result of that, if firms leave, or if you're able to successfully differentiate your product, is your demand curve will shift to the right. And as we can see, it's a little bit easier to see on this diagram, but if that shifts over to the right, you can see we're going to get to a point where that firm can now break even and no longer have economic loss. Obviously, if they are breaking even, so at QPM, AR and AC are equal to each other, then neither of these causes of the abnormal profit or the economic loss exist, and there's no reason for firms to enter or leave. However, as there is always a desire for abnormal profit, if I'm a firm operating at break-even profit, I'm still going to look for a way to differentiate because I want to make that abnormal profit, of course. So in the long run, firms can only break even, and really in all this, I hope you're drawing out of what I've talked about for the last few minutes. Product differentiation is really the key for monopolistic competition, and it's vitally important. For them to make abnormal profit, which they want, they have to be able to differentiate their product. Any questions or comments, leave them below.